Alien Confidential, hosted by Tony Topping. He's the Paranormal 007, you know, and I am his Miss Moneypenny.
Before we start, this is a show of Alien Confidential with our guest, Michael Lee Hill. At the end of this recording was a voice that wasn't me, and it wasn't a guest, and it said the word peace. And here it is, before we start the show, the mysterious voice that said peace.
Peace.
So excited, listeners, Alien Confidential. It's Tony Topping back again with yet another show, and I'm so excited to have our guest on, which is Michael Lee Hill, all the way from the US, a consciousness pioneer, I would describe him as. And I think for a change, we're going to get into some UFO stuff, and we're also going to get into a subject called the Wingmakers and the ACIO, which is an object of fascination for me. Michael Lee is an award-winning musician, filmographer, and UFO experiencer. His footage of the Lake Erie UFOs has created a Billy Meyer-like buzz, and Michael seems to have developed an intuitive relationship with these UFO craft in his home state of Ohio. He has experienced strange ET contact all his life, and because of this, he lands himself an appearance on a prime TV show, and that appears to be UFO Hunters on the History Channel. Now, on this episode, listeners, they decided to test his blood, and it is revealed that he did not have normal human blood. The UFO Hunters uncover a very rare blood anomaly bloodline that the world's best military and civilian doctors are at a loss to explain. And we're honoured to have him as a guest. Hello to you, Michael.
Hey, Tony, how you doing?
I'm all right, mate. I held my breath then for a split second. I thought the audio had gone at you with us.
Yeah, a little technical difficulty, but you know what? All's well that ends well.
Of course, mate. And tell us now, how did this daft question? You've read it. I mean, we've heard the biography. I just think it's fantastic that I've got someone to talk to about the Wingmakers. But tell me, how did it begin for you? How did you get into all this?
Well, I lived very close to Lake Erie, and around 2005, I seen some craft. I mean, I lived about a football field's length away from Lake Erie. And I didn't get that one on film, but it sparked my curiosity to find any parks or beaches along Lake Erie where I could go down around sunset. And I began just filming and accumulating quite a library. And that's what some of it went viral. And that's what led the UFO Hunters to my door. And then after that led to the contact with both the Annunaki and the ACIO of Wingmakers fame, which we can get into almost simultaneously.
I think what we need to do is just for the listeners, because there'll be some listeners who don't know what the ACIO is, or what the Wingmakers is, or even for that matter what the Annunaki is. I think I'm interested to know from what you've said in your biography that they turned up on your doorstep, UFO Hunters. And I think we maybe begin to start with telling us about your unusual bloodline for the listeners. What's that all about then, Michael?
Well, the UFO Hunters was originally just supposed to be like a show on Skywatchers. And they came to Cleveland and filmed me and whatnot. But what I didn't know is they had filmed another contactee. His name was Terrell Copeland, and he was a Marine and lived in Washington, about 500 miles away from me. But we both filmed the exact same craft, had the same story of contact, and the same message given to us, which is that law of attraction, kind of bit of info, be aware of what you're thinking about. But he had a very strange blood anomaly. The military found out. So the UFO Hunters thought, wouldn't it be weird if these two guys that don't know each other but have such similar stories ended up having the same blood anomaly? Yeah. So they contacted me, said, would you be willing to do a update to your story? And of course, I'm like, yeah, sure. So they ended up sending me to Boston and had my blood work done by a Harvard professor. His name was David Sistrom. By the way, if anyone wants to see any of this, it's the first season of UFO Hunters and ended up being the full episode. It's called Alien Contact.
Right.
But what they found in my blood was all of us have an enzyme our brains release called creatine kinase.
Yeah.
And it's 25 parts per liter of blood is the normal levels of this. But if you've ripped a muscle or had a heart attack,
Yes.
it can go up to about 300 parts per liter of blood.
Right.
And that's because creatine kinase brings extra oxygen into the bloodstream to facilitate healing. And so if normal levels are 25 parts per liter of blood, what they found in my blood was 2,100 parts per liter of blood.
Wow.
And so you could just imagine my blood being super oxygenated. And truly that brings a lot of extra chi or prana at a cellular level that's available. By the way, obviously, we'll get into who the ACIO are, but they had about 200 members, and 12 of them had my bloodline, and they told me my numbers of 2,100 would have put me in about the middle of,
And what is your? Sorry, Michael, to interrupt. What is your bloodline?
Well, it's Nephilim. It's the Annunaki human hybrid bloodline, which I know a lot of people throw them under the proverbial bus and say the Nephilim are behind the world's secret societies. What I'm here to show, and I have proof, is actually the oldest Nephilim bloodline on this planet is intertwined into the North American, Native American First Nations, which not who we've been told it is. And a matter of fact, I would say that the Native American First Nations have suffered under that evil machinery more so than any other race. The largest genocide on this planet was perpetrated against the Native American First Nations. But yeah, the Nephilim, if you're just type O, but type O negative is not all type O negative is high creatine kinase levels. The Harvard professor, obviously, he knows what type O is. This high creatine kinase levels, he was baffled. He said they could find they couldn't find any medical problem in my body that would be creating these astronomical levels of creatine kinase in my blood. He said if he had to guess, he would say it was an unknown virus that was tricking the brain into releasing these massive amounts of creatine kinase. Now, this all led to contact with the Annunaki, and they told me this was because they needed to create an offshoot of the human vessel that had more chi available so they could actually incarnate into it because they were having problems with spontaneous combustion. They told me that the human body was just not capable of handling their higher energetic signature. And as much as you want to help bursting into flames, it doesn't help the program. So they reevaluated and created this offshoot of the human genome, which is known as the Nephilim. And it has this higher chi, prana, life pool available. So
Good God,
I guess that'll do for now.
Good grief, Michael, you've made me speechless. Actually, you really have. And like myself, I have had a lot of UFO phenomena activity going on around me. I've had it since birth, since the age of 2 years of age. I've had extreme paranormal experiences all my life. It's taken me to the brink. It really has. Would I be of that same bloodline then, do you think, to have all that going on around me?
I would have to think so, actually. This is kind of like, what's that called? Self-appointed. You wouldn't be interested in having these contacts if you weren't connected.
That's right.
That would be my opinion.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That I'm not as I appear to be, and that's absolutely true. But so you did the UFO hunting documentary, and I did notice that you're being debunked on the internet, and I thought, well, he must be onto something there. Just before we get into the Lake Erie stuff, I noticed as well that you said on your Facebook page, or I read on the Facebook page, some sort of broadcaster, some American broadcaster, you were doing your footage on it, and they somehow debunked it. Is that correct? Just tell the listeners about that.
No, they didn't debunk it. I think what you're talking about is, when they came to my house to film, their actual equipment started making all kinds of whistling noises and
right
craziness, and thought that was odd. But they finally got what they needed, and then that night when they tried to show my footage, something took out the whole TV station. And
oh wow!
And
really?
Yeah, and I thank God that was back in the days of VCR.
Were you near the TV station?
What's that?
Were you near the TV station?
No, I was about 20 miles away.
20 miles? Because normally with experiences at this level, what you're talking about, Michael, we have a tendency to telekinetically turn off power in buildings quite easily. I know I was at a UFO conference last year or the year before, and I had this habit at the height of my experiences of turning power off, especially when I got cross with myself. And I remember at this UFO conference, we're looking at this plug. The speaker was already talking, and I had to go and do something with this plug to prepare for my talk or whatever it was I was going to do. And I went near the plug, and I thought to myself, watch yourself with electricity. You know what you're like. You can cut the power off, and boom, the power went off in the building. The whole building went out. The speaker was speaking, and the power went off. And so these are kind of like, for the listeners, occupational hazards that happen to us when we have these contact experiences. I do believe. It's interesting to note that you had a UFO incident over Lake Erie, and I wonder if you could tell the listeners, get into that with the listeners, because I found that fascinating.
Well, I can tell you, so your listeners know, the legitimacy of this is I was contacted by the United States Pentagon UFO program that funded Bigelow Aerospace $22 million. That happened in 2011. They told me, we know you're in contact with the real thing because we've been studying it over the Skinwalker Ranch. Mm-hmm. And what they are is these orbs of light, which they said the orbs of light is what they appear as before they take on physical.
That's right. Yeah,
physical form. Yeah. And what I learned from the investigator from Bigelow is over the Skinwalker Ranch, they're called Skinwalkers because the Native American First Nations there would see these orbs of light come down, and they would take on biological life forms, whether it was a giant wolf or a giant deer or whatever. But he also showed me the UK Ministry of Defense and some of the declassified documents there, and they said the real deal was these orbs of light, but in some process unknown to mankind, 3 of these orbs of light could come together and create one giant triangular craft. That's is why they're being seen all over the planet. But really, this isn't my opinion. This is the UK Ministry of Defense and Bigelow Aerospace, part of the Pentagon, saying the real deal are these orbs of light that are showing up worldwide right now. But then they can take on anything in our reality form, from anything biological to technological, anything from a giant wolf to a giant triangular craft. So it's a new ball game,
Well, it is. I know at the point when what you don't know about me, Michael, is the hell I've been through with all this. For example, I looked after my mother for 8 years when she had dementia. When we lost that battle for 8 years, and this is leading up to your point, when I lost that battle with her, she died. I lost the house I lived in. I had to. I lost her, and I had to move to another town and have hernia surgery, all in the same year. That was 2018. The UFOs were coming over here at the Marine Lake in Southport. Oddly enough, I'm near a lake. They were coming in, and at some point, you're exactly bang on. You're the first contact experiencer who is bang on with what you've just said regarding what they're about, because they purposely come over as balls of light. and they purposely switch off and and he purposely changed it to a triangle structure and then put the light back on again so I could see what it was. Cut a long story short, Michael, I was wandering around with mental exhaustion after my hernia surgery. I was in a bad way, actually. And I had a major incident over the marine lake involving a triangle craft with 3 pink lights on it that did something to me that cured my mental exhaustion. And I came face to face with what we could be called beings from Arcturus. I'm sure you're familiar with them, but they were Arcturian. And they came in, and to me, Michael, you're bang on in that these UFOs are using ocean bases, and they're from oceans in other universes, not just our universe. And you're the first contactee who's actually hinted at that. Was there any communication from these balls of light then? When the Pentagon approached you, was there any communication from these balls of light that you were seeing then?
That's a good question. At that point, it kind of grew because at first of all, I had this Sony Handycam with a little black and white viewfinder. And you know what? I do want to say people did try to debunk me, but they're like, oh, these lights are radio towers on the other side of Lake Erie in Canada. It's like 58 miles across. And I filmed these orbs of light coming out of the lake. People are like, oh, those are just airplanes. I'm going, well, that's a funny airplane.
Coming out of the lake.
Coming out of the lake and going into the lake. And I've been told by the NSA insiders that I began working with that the largest underground base in the world is under Lake Erie, and it's not ours. Right. The orbs of light is what started at first, but the way communication began was I didn't like filming them. You know, the colors are beautiful, as you already know. It's almost like multi-dimensional colors. Yeah. And here I am looking at it through a little black and white viewfinder, when really all I wanted is for the real color to hit my retina, you know. But I knew it was important to document this stuff. But what happened was I would start communicating with them and say, listen, I've already got great footage. If you don't do something different, come closer, you know, then I'm not going to film you. I'm just going to sit here and we'll spend this time together. Well, sure enough, they came closer and closer. And until I accumulated quite a library of footage. But that led to actual face-to-face contact with them in 2008. So from 2005, I started seeing the orbs of light, started communicating with them over Lake Erie. And they let me know, too, that one of the reasons we had contact is I didn't respond with anger or, doubt or anything, that those frequencies of emotion affect them in ways we don't understand yet. So if you're not ready, they just won't appear. And, we can get into this, but I've become a spokesperson for the mound builders. I'm Seneca Iroquois, Native American First Nation. And
just let me stop you there, Michael. That would be of particular interest, I think, to our audience. Just expand on that. It came out with a name that my ears just didn't catch. Could you sounded fascinating. Just slow it down. What were you, Indian Nation, again, and what's that all about? So you're an Indian?
I am of the Iroquois, which is a fascinating story in itself because
tell more.
The Iroquois were at war with one another for a very long time. There's 5 tribes originally that made up the Iroquois. And we call ourselves the Haudenosaunee, by the way, but no one would know what I was talking about if I said that. It's almost a French word, is Iroquois. But so there was a gentleman named the Peacemaker who crossed over Lake Michigan and taught them a different way. You know, these tribes were going at their life's trials and tribulations with the arrow. And what you find is that doesn't work. The Peacemaker showed up and taught them what was called the Great Law of Peace and told them about the olive branch. And they united. But what I can tell you is our forefathers of America, which means land of the plumed serpents, by the way, met with chief corn planter who was a chief of the Seneca, which is one of the Iroquois. And Chief Corn Planter taught George Washington and Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, this experiment in democracy of we the people, and what became our Constitution. And man, no one knows that here. It's been written out of our history books. But what you'll find is even Edgar Cayce, he talked about, a lot of people know Edgar Cayce talked about the Hall of Records, the Atlantean Hall of Records under the Sphinx's paw and whatnot. But what a lot of people aren't aware of is he said what happened to the Atlanteans. He said they intermingled into the Mayan culture and taught them the Mayan pyramid and the calendar and whatnot, but eventually left there when all the flesh and blood sacrifices started happening. They're like, we don't think they're getting it. Let's get the hell out of Dodge. And they came into the North American continent, becoming the mound builders. I am the mound builder representative for Star Knowledge, which this is fascinating to show you how far this has come. Your listeners, just Google University of Ottawa Star Knowledge. You'll find out the Star Knowledge movement of information that Native American First Nations have had from thousands of years of contact with star beings has went live in Canada now. And with the Canadian Public Corporation, which is a huge media outlet, kind of like America's PBS, but they filmed the show, and that's live now, and the University of Ottawa is starting to teach Star Knowledge. I will say, well, what is Star Knowledge? Well, it's the knowledge of how light and sound create physical reality. And so there's a lot underway. People don't know. Disclosure is going to lead right into who the Native American Indians are, and that is the remnants of the Atlanteans. And
you think disclosure is heading in that direction, Michael? You think disclosure? I think the opposite. I think it's a nefarious, disgusting cover-up brought on by disastrous consequences after World War II. That they let something in the gate, and they let something in the sheep pen, and I personally think from 45 years of dealing this, there's like an alien Cold War. There is a conflict among ETs. Would you agree?
What I've heard 15 is, and Eisenhower met with many races of extraterrestrials, and he met with the Annunaki and passed on first contact with the Annunaki because they wasn't, to them, giving us technology that we weren't ready for was like giving children matches. But the Greys, they're like, well, just let us abduct people and no one, will remember. And so our government sided with the Greys and sold us out, so to speak. So it's been about as long as you just said of us partnering with the Greys and it not ending up very well. But the Anunnaki have been waiting patiently on the sidelines, so to speak.
The thing is, Michael, this set us free. Sorry, just say again, mate. Sorry.
I said the truth will set us free,
Yes, the truth will, definitely the truth will set us free. And I think in the eyes of the divine and the creator, in fact, in the eyes of the sovereign integral, to use a Wingmakers phrase, this cannot be allowed to go on. It just cannot be allowed, and they know it and all. And I think that brings us very nicely to the fascinating website and work of the Wingmakers. And for those of you who listeners don't know, and I'm sure Michael will expand even further for us, Wingmakers was all about, I'll keep it simple, Michael, but the Wingmakers is all about the discovery of a tunnel of caves that had time-traveling artifacts in. Am I right in saying that? And the NSA, the National Security Agency, had gone in to find out what these artifacts were about. Maybe you can take it from there, Mike.
Yes, indeed. They called these sites ancient arrow sites, and the one they found was in Chaco Canyon, in New Mexico, and it went down into the ground in a spiral like DNA. And there's 24 chambers, but the human genome has 23 chromosomes, and the same as the human DNA, you can't get to the 24th chamber. You got to go in the 23rd, and there's a small tunnel that would make it to the 24th. Every chamber had a technological artifact in the form of a crystal and artwork. And who the Wingmakers are, they've been known as the Shining Ones, the Elohim, the Watchers. But to narrow this down, a lot of people think the Annunaki have just one bloodline running through their family tree, and that's not so. There is half of the Annunaki family tree Anunnaki is Syrian, and there's Syrian Pleiadian side that, and then there's a pure Anunnaki Syrian side, and the Anunnaki Syrian Pleiadian side was through an individual named Enki or Ea, and that the Pleiadians are the Wingmakers, and they're said to be even more advanced. I don't like the word advanced, but just an older race in the bigger universe, and brought love and a little bit more love and compassion and understanding into the Anunnaki family tree. But the Wingmaker sites was almost like a cultural library that was left for mankind that would be uncovered at the appropriate time. And the faction of the NSA, who was actually the remote viewers and the reverse engineering division of the NSA, was called the ACIO, which is Alien Contact Interface Organization. And then the most secretive division of the ACIO was known as the Labyrinth Group. But it was around 2008, because of myself being drawn to the Wingmakers. I'll tell you what happened was I became obsessed with it and the Dr. Neruda interviews. And as I read the Neruda interviews, every time a name came up, I would go and research it. And sure enough, it's exactly who they said it was. The person was real. He was in the position that they said he was. Every time some description of technology that was reverse engineered and it got out into mainstream 3D land, I would go and research that, and I started finding out it was all real. Everything.
How did you find out, Michael, that this, for listeners who don't know, there's interviews on the web, on the Wingmakers site, by a guy called Dr. Jemison Neruda, I think it's pronounced, isn't it? Yes. And he's an NSA guy. Now, the thing is with that, is within that, they put a secret in plain view. The site has been heavily debunked, but there is a secret in it, and it's to do with BST, blank slate technology, a product of the Wingmakers. It's actually a tool of psychic remote influencing at a very big scale. And yes. I would suggest, Michael, rather comically, and take it from a man who also knows, that you could deploy BST on a situation, let us say, BST, a form of remote influencing via the mind, and you could deploy it so that some guy didn't fall off a ladder. You saved his life, as an example, by using BST. You could see the event coming and you tune the event out of phase so it doesn't happen. But as a result of that, the guy who falls off the ladder, and it has this strange effect whereby somebody else falls off a bus or falls off a wall. It has this counter effect to it. That's what I discovered. I've not detailed it in my book, but I discovered the reality of this technology was there. So from my point of view, yes, I can see where you're coming from with it. My question to you is, how did you know Neruda was the real guy then? That's what I'm interested in. How did you find that out?
Well, because I began researching it and, just kind of became obsessed with it. But then what happened was I came across some leaked information on LERM, light encoded reality matrix. And I found out it came from this organization called the Life Physics Group, which is the public name of the ACIO.
What's that again, Michael? Sorry, what was that again? Just say that again for me.
Life Physics Group, LPG.
Right.
And I pretty much contacted them, and they pretty much gave me that explanation of, we've been waiting for you to contact us. Yep. And that instead of, that whole, man, I'm going to screw it up, but give a man a fish and he eats for a day. Teach him the fish. They'll fish for a lifetime. Yeah, well, they wanted to teach me how to fish instead of just giving me, and they said truly, they said that they call it a concentration, which is like a college course, that I would be taught cosmic harmonious frequencies. And, 15 told me that to create physical matter, not only do you need specific frequencies, which I found out is 432 hertz. We can get into that. But not only do you need very specific frequencies, but you need specific frequencies and specific combinations. Well, a combination of frequencies is a chord.
Tony Topping has lived a secret double life involving UFOs and close encounters with aliens. Alien, the secret UFO chronicles, tells of his 40 years of experiences with the world of paranormal espionage and UFOs. The current situation has led to a type of alien Cold War in the skies above by forces unknown to the human world. And the formation of a secret communication network not governed by time. The warning from aliens against human conflict is very real. With art inspired by his close encounters, Alien, the secret UFO chronicles.
And that I'll tell you what happened with all this is when this classroom concluded, I had all the knowledge I needed, and I was asked by Richard Hoagland. Are you familiar with Richard Hoagland?
I am, yes, I am indeed.
Cool. He contacted me and said he'd like to interview me on his radio show. And I was a big fan of Richard, so I was like, holy crap, So during the interview, he goes, Michael, we know your story sounds crazy to most people, but NASA has been looking into how energy flows and works multidimensionally. He calls it hyperdimensional physics. He said your numbers are right.
Yes,
right on. Your numbers are right on. And he said, I want to arrange for NASA to look into these crystal creations I make that embed cosmic harmonious frequencies. So sure enough, I sent NASA one, and they confirmed that these devices bring energy in from another dimension. And I have all the photography. It's kind of like Curian photography, where it can show the photonic energy level within a droplet of water. And municipal tap water, it was almost dead. It's just a little tiny pinprick of light. But you take that same water and put it in a glass and put it on one of my discs. Now, mind you, there's no wires going to it. There's no batteries. But after 15 minutes of sitting on a disc, it looked like a supernova. It was like exploded with energy. So this is fascinating as well, because like Christopher Dunn, who has been on Ancient Aliens many times, and he was at a conference and he's seen my work in the 432 and he's really excited. He said they found out that the pyramids in Egypt, I think it's the King's Chamber, that they found it resonates at A equals 432 hertz. It's the most resonant. And just so why this is important, if you take E equals mc squared, E is energy, M is mass, and then C is the speed of light. And, well, quantum physicists tell us everything is both particle and wave. So where's the wave component? M is mass. It's this physical reality. Where's the wave component? Well, 432 squared meaning 432 times 432, is the speed of light within 1% accuracy. The only frequencies that plug into E equals mc squared are 432 base frequencies. So run this backwards, 432 base frequencies. 432 times 432 equals c squared times mass. In this instance, we're using photons of light, and becomes energy. And I believe that just like a singer, if you can find the resonant frequency of glass, get a singer that can hit that frequency with such velocity, amplitude, that it'll shatter the glass. Well, imagine if you can find the resonant frequency of water and vibrate it, and well, you're going to end up with oxygen and hydrogen, aren't you? You know, but as it is right now, I can prove to the world that, first of all, if this technology is restructuring water and bringing back way more energy. And I asked the scientists, I said, wait a minute, if there was no energy, but now there's energy, where's that extra energy coming from? I said, is it from our realm? Is it from our sun? Is it from our planets? And she said, no, it's coming from another dimension. I was like, whoa. Never had to ask myself what drinking water that contains energy from another dimension is about. But I can tell you, our bodies are 70 to 90% water, depending on your age. And even holding one of these devices will bring extra prana and chi into the body. And we get most of our electricity or prana or chi from water. So all of a sudden, the human body has a high energy food source now to feed us on a cellular level. Your immune system goes through the roof, so on and so forth. So that's the culmination of my work with the Wingmakers, and 15 resulted in the creation. And 15 knew this. He said, Michael, one day you're going to invent something that a picture is worth a million words. And what you're going to bring to the table is not doubtable, you know.
For the listeners, Michael, just let me come in. I don't want to interrupt you because you're just fascinating. For the listeners, I think that we just need to clarify who 15 is. And not only that, 15 is the head of the ACIO. He's the mysterious man. Oddly enough, listeners, the American Collins Elite Agency, which you may have heard of, Michael. There's the Collins Elite, and their head was a guy called Loftus. It was codenamed Loftus Bridge, I think it was pronounced. And then you've got Majestic 1. But what I'm interested in is, in terms of 15, who is the head of the Wingmakers and the Cortinium outfit that produced all this, I'm interested to know, we see in the mainstream media at the moment, and it's quite farcical if I do say so myself, we've seen the UFOs, but we don't know what they are. And we're kind of like heading for disclosure. We are and we aren't, because they are being dictated to by something quite nefarious, I do feel. But in terms of, from 15's point of view, and let's suspend, listeners just go with this, kind of like from the point of view of 15 and the ACIO, what do they think was the UFO cover-up, or is the UFO cover-up at this moment in time?
Well, A.R. Borden is 15, by the way. 15 was truly the 15th person to hold a position within the NSA, this remote viewer reverse engineering division. He was the 15th leader of it, and it's just that simple. Matter of fact, the mission that we had in 2012 ended up with his man. I don't. Well, not to be blunt, but he was taken out. And that was a very sad day for me, because he became a father figure to me. And he gave me almost like a course of study to help me process my contact with the Annunaki. What's really strange with this is people watch that UFO Hunters show, Alien Contact. A host of that, Bill Burns, said during the show, I believe you're being given a course of study to help you make sense of your contact. And beyond that, in my living room, no one else was around, but he said, Michael, I'm really jealous of you and the role that you have to play as ambassador between extraterrestrials and yourself and mankind in the future. And this is
before, Michael, sorry to playing devil's advocate here. Some people would think that you're a complete fantasist. You've just made that up. Where is the proof of all this? Where is the proof of 15? Where is the proof of A.R. Borden? We've only got your word for it, but it's not quite as easy as that, is it?
No, you know what? I mean, anyone that wants to look into this, I have all the ebooks and learning material, but A.R. Borden, being who he was, first of all, I'm the only one who has ever interviewed Mark Hempel, and
Mark Hempel, yes, he was the start of the Wingmakers, wasn't he?
Yes, and Darlene Burgess, who correlated all the information into the books. I interviewed them both, but 15 A.R. Borden gave me permission. I interviewed him. I'll share that interview with you. I can't put it online because it keeps being censored and taken down.
I'd be honoured, Michael, for you to share that. I wouldn't put it out on air, but I would be honoured. Yeah, that would be great.
Well, I want to put it out on here. I'm like, let's just get it out to thousands of people simultaneously so it can't be removed. But I feel very fortunate. We became that close. And there's absolute proof of. I have a 2-hour-long interview with him. I have all the learning material. I have the NSA tasking instructions that I was given. I'll share all this with you, too. And a matter of fact, if anyone wants to see any of this, when I met the Annunaki, which was in 2008, they said, we were once in your past known as the Annunaki. Mind you, there was no Ancient Aliens on TV. I didn't know what an Anunnaki even was. But they said, you were once known in the past as Ea Inki, the water bearer. And at that time, if I didn't know who the Anunnaki was, I sure didn't know what an Ea Inki water bearer was. But now with the work done with Richard Hoagland and NASA, I could look someone in the eye and go, I am the water bearer. Would you like to see the scientific data? I guess that answered the question. I would be.
Yeah, sorry, mate. I'm just listening. I'm just going to. What I'm interested to know is the NSA tasking instructions. I mean, how do you get involved with a super secret agency like them and ended up interviewing 15? I mean, I know James of the Wingmakers, the guy who is part of that site. I haven't seen on the Wingmakers site anything to do with an interview with 15 anywhere.
No.
So that's incredible. What you've just said as a Wingmakers fan is just incredible.
I can share my interview with A.R. Borden /15, and I'll share my interview with Mark Hempel and Darlene, and lots is revealed in that.
Wow.
But the tasking instructions was the team that he put together was a 7-member team, and all of us was of the Nephilim bloodline. And he was what was known as the wave guide. And each one of us, I had a partner. And so there was 3 teams of 2 people. That's 6. And then he was the wave guide that took that mental energy and amplified it and sent it onto the incoming. So at first, my partner's name was Joshua, and we were asking the Anunnaki for help in 2012. If you remember, there was Hurricane Sandy was coming into New York, and they knew it was being artificially steered. But what people may not realize is there was an earthquake on the other side of the United States, and that was Earthquake Charlotte, and it created a tsunami that was a 20-foot wall of water that was heading towards Hawaii. So during this time, we had created this team that, pretty much they said for this team to work, they taught us how to recognize each other's energetic signatures on a non-physical platform. We used like a Roman Colosseum visualization to meet at, and then once they could see that we could find our partner, and the way that they did that is we had to learn everything about our partner. So me and Josh would have long conversations, share all kinds of family photos from childhood, to really be able to get a sense of their energy. And once they called it a handshake, they knew me and him had a handshake. Then they would see if we had a handshake with the incoming Annunaki. And they knew I am Ia Inki here in this human meat suit. And once that was confirmed that they had a handshake, what they said, for instance, to stop Hurricane Sandy, they said, we know that you're not a weatherman. They gave me the tasking instructions were all the data of the storm, its trajectory, its velocity. It's like probably about 20 pages. I can share that. By the way, everything that I got, I started a group named Team Inky. And anyone that wants to look at any of this material, including these tasking instructions, just go to Facebook and join my group, Team Inky.
Oh, Team Inky. How's that spelled for the listeners? Team, is it?
Team, T-E-A-M, and then Inky, E-N-K-I. And they said, and they said, we know you're not a weatherman. You're not going to know what to do with this information. All we need you to do, though, is to place your eyes on it. Read it. They're going to be looking through your eyes. You're going to be their iPhone, and they'll know what to do with this data.
This is blank slate, isn't it? This has got to be BST. This has got to be... Yeah?
Yes. Yeah. And it was a little bit more involved than that. They said, which is interesting, these monoliths that are showing up all over the world. They said that there's monoliths on all of the planets where ley lines cross, and that the last time Nibiru came through, that's their planet. And it's truly a part of our solar system, but it goes out into deep outer space and orbits around a dark star, and it only comes back through our part of the neighborhood every 3,600 years. They said the last time that these monoliths were used to hold tectonic plates and buffer electromagnetic fields, and it worked very well, but it was being used in a kind of a new way. So now you can imagine when I see these monoliths showing up all over the world. But so this is some of the work we did, but there's a couple things that were happening in 2012 that they had went to the Annunaki to help us have a better timeline, a better outcome to this human story.
Yeah.
One was to take the energy out of Hurricane Sandy. The other one was to take the energy out of tsunami/earthquake Charlotte. And both of those, as you know, all the energy was taken out of them before.
Michael, if you're using BST, I've studied Wingmakers closely, and for listeners, I'm talking about blank slate technology. I'm talking about a very advanced influencing system of the mind that accesses time and space to tune a situation out of existence or into existence, as I understand it. So you could therefore, as Michael is clearly stating here, you would use this blank slate technology to influence, let us say, my local town from flooding. My local town was under threat of flood. However, by using BST, you can influence the situation so effectively the event of the flooding of the town is tuned out. However, this tuning, it appears, has a harmonic to it because the event is now in free fall, floating around the universe, wanting to manifest itself somewhere. By comical irony, Alien Joe, who's never had rain nor a flood at his location, could be in a galaxy somewhere, might have that event appear. That's how, am I right in saying, Michael, BST, the Wingmakers, that technology, that's how it really was hit and miss. Therefore, my question is, if you're using this tech, how hit and miss was it with the events that you were influencing? Did you get that kind of recoil of you stop the hurricane, but it appears somewhere else kind of scenario?
Well, that's very interesting. First of all, blank slate technology. It's not very common in the bigger scheme of things because you could change something and have no clue what the outcome of what you changed. So it's just not allowed on higher spiritual levels. But what is totally intertwined with blank slate technology is what's called ENS, or electrical neural sensing. And imagine Annunaki Wingmaker technology assisted remote viewing, where they call it the Meissner field, which is your aura field. It's the energy around the human body. It could be amplified using technology to, in a nutshell, say you wanted to go back and remote view a saloon. Most other races in the multiverse, they can only remote view in observer mode, but they had the technology to increase the Meissner field that when they remote viewed an area, they could bring down a new avatar. So then you can change things, right? For the easiest way to understand it, again, if you are remote viewing a saloon back in the 1800s, now you're not in an observer mode. You can sit and go, pour me up a shot, and drink it. Well, the same thing happened with, are you familiar with the Philadelphia experiment?
Yeah.
Where they made
yes.
a magnetic false Merkaba around it, actually. And they ripped it out of this time-space continuum, and it popped back in 1988. That's what happened, is they said that they were using these monoliths in a brand new way that had never been done, they said pretty much they're going to get the hell out of Dodge, but take Dodge with them, which people can look into. Nassim Harriman, 2003, a planet came through our solar system that, by all means, it has all the definition of Nibiru. And as it came through, a huge solar coronal discharge, a solar flare, came off the sun and engulfed that planet, and said that we weren't told about this because all the scientists thought we're toast, because it should have wreaked havoc on all of the planet's tectonic plates and whatnot. But as it passed through our solar system, there was no effect at all. And so what 15 said was the work we did was to rip the Earth out of this space-time continuum. It was only for like a brief, half of a millisecond. So to us, we wouldn't even know it, but time does not flow the way we think it does once you're removed out of the space-time continuum. We pop back in for a brief second in 2036. And then pop back in. And like you said, we'll get to, because it wasn't just these earthbound things. They're what they call the galactic superwave, this huge wave of cosmic energy that was spit out of the massive black hole that's in the middle of our galaxy. And it was set to arrive in 2012. So they did this experiment to, take the Earth out of danger. To us, it would only be a blink of an eye. But in the ether, we pop back in 2036 and then pop back in. So, but this gets into a very interesting subject. And 2036 is going to be a very important time for humanity, because just look into Comet Apophis or asteroid Apophis. It will, there's some very fear-based things in this, and I know there's actually it's a three-way division. If you go into fear and doubt and what believe what's going to be told to you, because Lockheed Martin knows about this. They've already sent craft up to look into its trajectory and its composition. In 2029, it's going to pass between the Earth and the Moon, and it's going to not be debatable. You know what I mean? Like, people are going to see it, and it's going to get caught in Earth's orbit, and it's going to orbit 3 more times, but each time a decaying orbit, because now it's trapped in Earth's orbit. And the story that's going to be given to mankind from all science is it's going to impact, and it's a civilization ending event. As a matter of fact, I couldn't believe it, but I just watched a new movie called Greenland, and it's all about this. As a matter of fact, the comet that is in that movie, they named it Wormwood. I was like, well, okay. But here's the deal, man. That's only option 1. I was sitting next to Chief Golden Light Eagle, who is the chief and spiritual leader of the Dakota, and he's also been on Ancient Aliens many times. But he said right in the middle of this, what's that called, when they have like 6 people at a table all together. He was sitting right next to me. He said, we've been given permission that in 2036 there's going to be this celestial object, and he said that the moon is going to take the hit for us, and it's survivable, but it's still horrific. Chunks of the moon would rain down on the planet, and but what the third option is, if you don't go into fear and if you haven't learned to center and not let the outside world affect your reality, there's a whole third reality, and that is our second moon is being flown into place, just like the first one was. Many of your listeners may know our moon is artificial. It's hollow, rang like a bell when our craft hit it. So just like the moon regulates the Earth's water and weather systems, once the new moon arrives in 2036, it'll be caught in an anti-gravity web and released slowly into Earth's orbit. And from that point, the Earth's waters will be super regulated, and this place will become a paradise that it's always been intended to be. But it's also, separating the wheat from the chaff, So
yes, it is, and it is. It's very worrying. 2036 is worrying for a lot of reasons, including 2030 to about 2036, with the threat of nuclear war, low-level nuclear conflict between China and Russia and America, and there's got to be. This is where you start getting into divine intervention happening with the higher celestial dimensional forces. Would you not agree, Michael? Yeah.
15 told me that there's no way higher forces would let that happen. He said this planet is more special than we can even imagine, and before they would let us destroy it, we'd be removed. This planet will not be destroyed. It's too much of a jewel. He said on a lot of other planets in the multiverse that it's not typical to have this variety of life forms on a planet. But I've been very careful at revealing this information because I realize how scary this is going to be. And the movie Greenland really hit it out of the park. It actually caused me a little bit of traumatic stress syndrome, So did the movie 2012, by the way.
But these events are not solid. These events are tunable, aren't they? I mean, even the Russians. Yes. The Russians. I've been studying the Russian project Stargate, their very own contactee metacosmos techniques. All about, in a way, it was all about BS, all about brain tuning, influencing of tuning of situations in time. Michael, you're the first guest I've had on that has accurately described the Wingmakers and the real the real nitty-gritty of what the Wingmakers was about, because it's been heavily debunked. People have called it a fraud, but in those Neruda interviews, the BST bit is the bit that was the secret in plain view. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, yes, indeed. But I'll tell you what 15 told me was the biggest secret kept from mankind. You've heard of the 100th monkey?
Yes.
The 100th monkey story. Should we explain what? Should we just assume that your listeners know what the 100th monkey is? The 100th monkey story has it at 7%. That once 7% of a mass consciousness adapts a new way of approaching trial and tribulation, or a way of approaching some problem, a roadblock in the way, it spreads throughout the whole mass consciousness, and it doesn't have to be taught. Once 7%, he said, no, it's only 3%. So the fact of the matter is, he said the biggest secret kept from mankind is it only takes 3% of us to be resonating in a higher frequency that's more love-filled than fear to change the mass reality. You know what, man? We didn't come this far to only come this far.
No, we didn't. No, we did. We certainly did.
And I can tell you from my own work, the fact that we're even talking right now is blank slate technology. We took this planet into a different timeline in 2012, and yeah.
It really has. Well, listen, it's coming up to an hour, Michael. It's all we've got. Coming for an hour. But I mean, will you come back for a part 2 of all this? Because my God.
Talking with you.
Sorry, say again.
It's a pleasure talking with you. I would be honored.
Again, definitely.
Real quick, the core team is the Annunaki.
Yeah. Right.
Council. Yeah.
It's interesting. Who is 15 now? Then, do you know who's running the show now? Then, Michael.
I asked some of the, because 15 has passed away.
Yes.
The work we did against the people behind the Georgia Guidestones ended up in them taking his life, and so I asked another higher up, and I said, "Well, who's 16?" And they said that chapter of the book has not been written yet.
It's going to be a great future for mankind.
I think so too. Like I said, we didn't come this far to only come this far, and we're in good hands. You know, these beings have shown they're multidimensional and have far-reaching capability of arranging event strings that are hyperdimensional.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Listen, Michael, thank you very much for appearing on the show. You're going to come back for a part 2. That's all we've got time for. This has been Alien Confidential. Our guest has been Michael Lee Hill. Thank you once again for joining us.
Peace.
And as you just heard then, listeners, that wasn't me, and it wasn't the guest. This is Alien Confidential. Are the Martians really listening to this broadcast? The opinions expressed on Alien Confidential are those of the hosts and guests. They do not purport to reflect the views of the radio station Access Northwest. The material in the broadcast should be classed for entertainment value only.